Okay, we're live. And this evening, Monday, February 5th, 2024, um, Lord willing, I'm going to discuss the self-awareness of Jesus and how we can determine that from this passage in John chapter 11, verse starting starting at John 11, verse 1. Um, Maybe I'll read this in the NET version. I'll read it in the NET, New English translation, and the online Bible here. So the main point of this video, it has to do with this idea that Jesus, in his humanity, um, has the idea is to answer the question, what is his actual self-awareness within himself, not necessarily how we um, subjectively view him, but how he actually views himself and what he knows about himself. How self-aware is he? Because some people would say, I think maybe even a lot of people would think or wonder, question, is Jesus completely self-aware or all the time, or not? Is there some deficiency in his own self-awareness of who he is? Um, I'll just say that I was recently approached by a okay, I'm not going to even go there right now, actually, because I don't want to get distracted. Maybe I'll talk about that another time. But is Jesus God is the question. Is Jesus, which some people would say, well, Jesus is the Son of God. Um, yes, but what does that mean? What does that mean? Question is, what is him being the Son of God? What does that mean about his own self-awareness then, as the Son of God? So let me just, there's an important verse in here that I want to latch on to answer that question. Now a certain man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village where Mary and her sister Martha lived. Now it was Mary who anointed the Lord with perfumed oil and wiped his feet dry with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So the sister sent a message to Jesus. Lord, look, the one you love is sick. When Jesus heard this, he said, this sickness will not lead to death, but to God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he remained in the place where he was for 2 more days. Then after this, he said to his disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." The disciples replied, "Rabbi, the Jewish leaders were just now trying to stone you to death. Are you going there again?" Jesus replied, "Are there not 12 hours in a day? If anyone walks around in the daytime, he does not stumble, but because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks around at night, he stumbles because the light is not in him." After he said this, he added, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to awaken him." Then the disciples replied, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover." Now, Jesus had been talking about his death, but they thought he had been talking about real sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus has died, and I am glad for your sake that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." I'm just going to stop right there real quick. So Jesus, he heard that Lazarus was sick. It mentions that he loved them, but when he heard that, he stayed there 2 more days and then said, "Let's go to Judea." And he said that he knew that Lazarus was dead at this point, and he said he was glad that he was not there so that they may believe. Um, so that would kind of seem odd. But of course, Jesus, he knows what he's about to do. So that's the purpose of why he's obviously setting this all up so that they may believe. So Thomas, called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us go too, so that we may die with him." When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had been in the tomb 4 days already. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, so many of the Jewish people of the region had come to Martha and Mary to console them over the loss of their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary was sitting in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will grant you." Jesus replied, "Your brother will come back to life again." Martha said, "I know that he will come back to life again in the resurrection at the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even if he dies, and the one who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She replied, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who comes into the world." And when she had said this, Martha went and called her sister Mary, saying privately, "The teacher is here and is asking for you." So when Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still in the place where Martha had come out to meet him. Then the people who were with Mary in the house, consoling her, saw her get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought she was going to the tomb to weep there. Now when Mary came to the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Now remember that Jesus said he was glad that he was not there for their sakes, for the disciples' sakes, so that they would believe. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the people who had come with her weeping, he was intensely moved in spirit and greatly distressed. He asked, "Where have you laid him?" They replied, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept. Thus the people who had come to mourn said, "Look how much he loved him." But some of them said, This is the man who caused the blind man to see. Couldn't he have done something to keep Lazarus from dying?" Jesus, intensely moved again, came to the tomb. Now it was a cave, and a stone was placed across it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the deceased, replied, "Lord, by this time the body will have a bad smell, because he has been buried 4 days." Jesus responded, "Didn't I tell you that if you believe, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you that you have listened to me. I knew that you always listen to me, but I said this for the sake of the crowds standing around here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, he shouted in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The one who had died came out, his feet and hands tied up with strips of cloth, and a cloth wrapped around his face. Jesus said to them, "Unwrap him and let him go." Then many of the people who had come with Mary and had seen the things Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and reported to them what Jesus had done. So the chief priests and the Pharisees called the council together and said, "What are we doing? For this man is performing many miraculous signs. If we allow him to go on in this way, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away our sanctuary and our nation." Then one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said, "You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is more to your advantage to have one man die for the people than for the whole nation to perish." Now he did not say this on his own, but because he was high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus was going to die for the Jewish nation, and not for the Jewish nation only, but to gather together into one the children of God who are scattered. So from that day they planned together to kill him. So, wow. So, wow. So, to the question of Jesus's self-awareness, the verse that I wanted to highlight was chapter 11, verse 41 and 42. And taking this verse, essentially applying it universally to the character and nature of Jesus himself, his own consciousness, self-consciousness, and self-awareness. He said, "Father, I thank you that you have listened to me. I knew that you always listened to me, but I said this for the sake of the crowds standing around here, so that they may believe that you sent me." This tells us that he's sent, his very saying this, praying to the Father, thanking and praying to the Father, he does this for the sake of the crowd around him, for the sake of the listeners, so that they may believe that the Father sent him, Jesus. And then, of course, that means that Jesus is the glory of God. Didn't I tell you if you believe you would see the glory of God? I knew that you always listen to me, but I said this, they may believe you sent me. Lazarus, come out. Unwrap him and let him go. So if he has this self-awareness, and we take this verse, this prayer to the Father, um, and that he knows that the Father always listens to him, but he says this for the sake of those listening. If we took that and applied it to, say, let me look up. Father, why have you forsaken me? Matthew 27:46. Um, at about 3 o'clock, Jesus shouted with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. Um, that is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Um, Now, some of the bystanders heard it. They said, this man is calling for Elijah. Immediately, one of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink. But the rest said, leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah will come to save him. Basically mocking him, his words that he had just spoken. They don't, and that's really the point, is they don't understand the words that he's just spoken. My God, why have you forsaken me? And it's because these words are really only meant to be understood by those who they're intended to, the ones that intended to understand the answer. Um, so kind of could, I don't know, Samson's riddle comes to my mind. Um, and also recently has been coming to my mind, the story about David, um, pretending to be insane, which I think is like 1 Samuel. Yeah, 21-ish. Because a lot of people, I think there's one major prominent Bible doctor, researcher guy who's, I think, a former Christian in name or something, that, you know, I believe that, Jesus was kind of, at this moment, this recording of his last words of, my God, why have you forsaken me, is a desperate plea without an answer. Um, and, his death was a tragedy, and then there was nothing that came out of it, which would leave us with no hope if that were the case. Um, but um, but the statement, I mean, it clearly had its effect in Matthew 27 there, where the people were confused about what he said. He said, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. And they said, oh, he's calling for Elijah. Maybe Elijah will come, save him. They didn't get what he was saying, and really the question is posed, I believe, for the sake of those who are listening, for us to ask the question ourselves, why was he forsaken on the cross, or, you know, left to endure the suffering and shame of the cross, which the answer is really so simple that a child could understand it, is that he was sacrificing himself as the atonement lamb, the Passover lamb for the sins of his people. And the intention was, as it is stated in the New Testament letters, that the grace of God is intended to lead you to a change of mind, change of heart. So, and as Jesus said, it's to give us hope, um, give us comfort. Um, so in First Samuel, but to others, it's confusion. Like Isaiah says, speak to this people, but they will not hear. You know, they will not listen. They'll they may hear, but they won't understand. And that's really God and His Spirit um, to make that effective and to give life through the word of His gospel. But so yeah, so here David goes to Himelech, he eats the bread of the presence with his soldiers. He takes the sword of Goliath, who he had struck down. He goes to King Achish of Gath, and his servants said to him, "Isn't this David, the king of the land? Isn't he the one that they sing about when they dance, saying, Saul struck down his thousands, but David his tens of thousands?" David thought about what they said and was very afraid of King Achish of Gath. So he altered his behavior in their presence. Since he was in their power, he pretended to be insane, making marks on the doors of the gate and letting his saliva run down his beard. Achish said to his servants, "Look at this madman. Why did you bring him to me? Do I have a shortage of fools, that you have brought me this man to display his insanity in front of me? Should this man enter my house?" Boom. That statement right there is the statement of the unbelieving as it concerns um, the person and work of Jesus Christ. Because they can't, and the gospel is foolishness to those who are perishing, and the humility of Christ is they can't see him as being self-aware and being God. But anyway, I guess that's all I have for tonight. So, Bible Meta signing out.